In this Burnout Extra, I'm going to show you how to change the brakes in your 2000 Jeep Cherokee. And these front brakes are disc brakes. So the other video that I can link up in this corner here, that video will link to the back brakes, which are drum brakes with shoes in the back. The first thing that you're gonna want to do is loosen the lug nuts on the tire. Now, if you're on the ground and working with a small jack, and maybe a lug nut wrench as well, you're gonna wanna loosen these before you get the tire off the ground. However, thankfully, I already have it up on a lift, so I'm just gonna buzz the lug nuts off with an impact. After you've loosened the lug nuts, you want to be able to take the tire off. So I've already taken that off now, and you can see the brake components once you've taken off that tire. So right here we have the brake rotor, and then the caliper is what actually squeezes together the brake pads so that your car can stop, and the pads are what ride inside the caliper. So the pads are these thin, almost rectangular shaped objects that go along the side and sit inside the caliper. So the next steps from here would be removing these two bolts, which are located right here and right here. These are the two that are holding in the caliper itself, and that'll allow you to get to the brake pads. So once again, you want to remove that bolt and that bolt right there. Unfortunately, mine aren't coming out too easily, so I just threw some WD-40 on the bolts, and hopefully that'll loosen it up a little bit so that this wrench turning will be easier, and I don't feel like I'm going to snap a wrench. So once you have the two bolts off in the back, you're going to want to remove this caliper here. And I found that the best way to do that is to take a screwdriver and put it up against the pad. You can see that I'm not quite touching the rotor there, but I'm up against the pad, and then I'm going to pry downwards, and you'll see it. You'll see that caliper begin to slip off. Now you can see that right here I've gotten it past this point. This is part of the brake pad itself. And once you've gotten it past here, you can actually remove the bottom of the brake pad from this groove here. So these brake pads will come up and out. And this needs to be beyond this point to the right in order to get that up and out as well. So once again, you're gonna pull off this entire caliper, and it's still gonna be connected with this line. So you can bring this caliper off of the rotor itself and then just hang it up here for now. You obviously don't want to cut or disconnect this brake line because that has live brake fluid in it right now. So pull this caliper off, and then you will be able to get at the brake pads and remove those next. Now, if you're at this stage right here and you actually realize that there's tons more to be replaced, I have other videos on this channel that will show you how to replace the hub, the knuckle, as well as a few parts back here and how to install them on a Jeep Cherokee. So if you realize other parts are potentially bad, then feel free to check out those videos. I'll link them down in the description. But as of right now, we are going to move forward installing the brakes. So what I'm gonna do is slap on a rotor first. That's gonna be the first thing that needs to go on, and then I'll show you where the pads go from there. Now that the rotor's in place, you're going to need the caliper, which I have zip tied up to the spring here. One thing to note about the caliper itself is these pins here should be easy to push in and out. So if those are not kind of easy to push, you can see this one's a little more stiff. Sometimes it just takes a little grease back and forth, but if those pins are not easy to push, then you're gonna wanna either swap the pin or get a new caliper. I do have a video I'll link right up in the corner, and that is how to install a new pin and the boot for these calipers here. However, at this point, this caliper is still good. I already did the pin kit, and I need to push back the caliper. This will open up your caliper and allow you to slide it over a new rotor very easily. So what you do is you put an old brake pad in there, put this in here, and you essentially tighten to push open the caliper. And it's important to note that when you're doing brakes, the next time you hop in the car, it would be ideal to press the brake pedal about 4 times, pump it up and down before you start the car. That will make it so that when you go to press the brakes the first time, the air is fully in the caliper and you won't expect any delay between your stopping. So once these pins are pushed back and this caliper is fully open, now we can put in the new brake pads. I recommend putting some all-purpose grease. For this, I just use extreme pressure grease, but I just put this on the back of the pads so that the wear is even and it's smooth. So I'll show you that right now. So wherever the pad rides, this is actually the outside pad that will sit right in there. And so I want to grease essentially this side right here. So I'm just going to slap some under this and slap some under this. Once again, this will help from corrosion and it will also let the pads wear evenly and not get stuck on any corrosion or something like that. And then on the back one as well, where it actually touches the caliper, I'm just going to throw some grease in a circle because that's where it touches there. When you're installing the pads, you want the U shape to be with the shape of the caliper. So the one with 3 prongs in the center is going to go into the caliper right like this. And they should just snap into place just like that. And then the other one will slide over the top here into place like this. The way to check if you have the pads in the right place would be this hole and this hole right here. Those 2 holes are essentially pin holes for this pad, and this pad just rests right into the caliper. So once that's good to go, once again, you have the pins pushed all the way towards the car in this case scenario, then you're good to slide over the new rotor. Once again, you just want to get it right in between the pads. It might be a little tough at first. An important thing to note when you're putting the caliper on with the pads is that if your caliper's not all the way open, then you're not going to have the space to put it on a new rotor. So what I did is open it up really far just so that you can get the new pads over it. Now in this circumstance, the top of the pads here, you want to make sure that they're sitting on this groove right here. So I'm going to kind of slide the pads in the top. Might be a little tough because once again the caliper needs to be all the way open. That's why the whole rotor was crooked. So once you have it roughly in place, now's the time to put the 2 bolts in the back of the pins. These bolts look like this. I believe they are a 10mm on this Jeep. And once again, they go straight through the pins and into the knuckle. You might have to shimmy around the pads just a little bit to get them caught. Obviously thread those in tight. I just got them tight with a ratchet socket, and then I'll do another wrench turn with a wrench. So once those 2 bolts are in tight, you're pretty much good to go as long as the pads are riding on this as they should. The caliper's in place, it's secure. Make sure your brake line is still hooked up and everything looks good. From here, you just slap on the tire and you should be good to go. So hopefully this helped. For disc brakes, this is pretty much the same setup for almost any car. Sometimes the brake pads will ride on a different caliper bracket. However, the caliper and how the pads go on is very similar. So if you need to just learn how to do disc brakes, then you can follow along this tutorial and it will get you through that as well. However, this is the Jeep style for the older Jeeps, and this is exactly how it's done on this car. But hopefully this helped. Thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you next time, and be sure to check out more videos on this Jeep if you're interested as well. We have plenty posted on the channel. Be sure to check those out, and we will see you next time.